Hello fellow Star Wars fans, it is Star Raptor here, coming at you with another The High Republic video. This week I want to talk about possible story ideas slash themes that were represented in a single slide from the announcement trailer for The High Republic. So we have the authors that are on board for The High Republic. They are Char Soule, they are Cavan Scott, Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Older, and we have Justina Ireland. They are all involved with creating the comics and the books, and they have done many days worth of collaboration down at Skywalker Ranch. And this was a board from one of their many meetings, and it was split up into fiction, Star Wars, and Star Wars wishes. These are ideas that are coming up with. They are brainstorming. This is why this collaboration is unlike anything we've really seen in Star Wars, and definitely not in Star Wars publishing before. So let's just go through the list. I'll add some of my own speculation, my own spin on what could possibly be something that might be in the upcoming publishing for the High Republic. So let's start off with the fiction category, authentically lived in. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Star Wars A New Hope, everything is lived in, right? The original trilogy, it's got those little scuff marks, just the way the ships have damage and all of that. You compare that to the prequels where everything is shiny and bright and all chrome-esque. So I think having the High Republic authentically lived in will again give it that sense of, oh, this happened, 200 years ago, as these stories are supposed to happen. Of course, the authors want to have some element of a surprise. I mean, we go to the biggest surprise in Star Wars history, and that is Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father. Lots of surprises other than that in Star Wars, and that is always something that fans are just clamoring for, is when they're experiencing a movie or a comic or a TV series, is just to read those cliffhangers, to read those big expanding moments. Another thing underneath the fiction category is diversity. So yes, recently, especially with Disney, there are people of all shapes and sizes and colors in Star Wars, and really it's been that way since the original trilogy, and it's only gotten better since. So I can honestly see, and not just for that, not just for the different humans, but I'm looking forward to seeing the different alien species. And from the artwork, the concept art, we're already seeing several species that are recognizable. Different things like Twi'leks and Quarren, and anything you can name is pretty much represented in these early images we've seen so far. They want to see in the fiction category an actual ending. So it's kind of hard to do that in Star Wars because it's such a huge galaxy, but I'm thinking that, after several years is what they predict this to be. Phase 1 is going to be comprised of 5 different works between the comics and novels, but this could be, 5 years, it could be 10 years, but eventually they do want to get to a point where they will have a complete story. So that idea I do like, especially if we get very close to those events of like the Phantom Menace. I mean, 200 years, I don't think they're going to come that close to it, but it depends on what the actual story is. They also want to focus on feelings. So Star Wars has so many of those feels, as we kids like to call them. You have Luke staring at the twin suns and aspiring to be something more than living as a moisture evaporator. We have different characters throughout Star Wars, and it brings up those feelings of bravery and courage, and to have those feelings in Star Wars is absolutely crucial, so that I do appreciate. Relatable characters. Again, Luke is that character that wants to leave. He's yearning to be something different. You could talk about Ezra Bridger from Star Wars Rebels. He doesn't have a family anymore, and he seeks a family of not, bloodline, but of more of like a friendship. So to see that character that everybody latches onto, because I latched onto Luke a lot. I somewhat thought I looked like Luke, and that's a character that I can see myself being in the shoes of. So everybody, it's important to have a character like that in Star Wars. So we're going to see that. They also want to see a sweeping epic, and that is what Star Wars is. I mean, you have wars in the stars, so you're going to have a reason to have this era of Star Wars called the High Republic. We are already talking about the Great Disaster, and that can maybe relate to hyperspace being messed up or something like that. So we're going to see something. We're going to have these characters called the Nihil. They are brand new villains in Star Wars. I have a video about what we know so far on the channel. You can check that out. Of course, we have to have humor in Star Wars. I mean, the comic relief is there from the beginning with C-3PO and R2-D2, but then we have other characters in recent memory like K2SO and BB-8 lends plenty of comedy. So that is a huge thing of Star Wars. Yes, there's lots of many dark moments. There's lots of moments that you just kind of want to cry. But when it all comes down to it, there's always going to be elements of humor that add levity to something that can be very serious at times. So I do want to focus into the second category here from this image, and that is Star Wars. So Star Wars specifically, they do not want it to be pro-war. So you look at that scene from Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker throwing away the lightsaber, throwing away his only defense, to not turn to the dark side. So Star Wars from the very beginning has always been to try to solve things peacefully, and as a story that's going to be focused around the Republic and the Jedi at their absolute height, it would make absolute sense for this not to be a very pro-war story. Remember, we're trying to expand the Republic out to the different areas of space that up until now we haven't really seen. So a lot of the fringe element, we're seeing the Jedi as the Texas Rangers of the galaxy. They're going to be on the front lines, on the frontier, speaking with different people that they have not ever encountered before. So there's very much going to be a lot more diplomacy, I think, in the story. Next thing in this category is droids. And that is just the lifeblood of Star Wars. Every new story, we are bringing in droids. It doesn't matter if it's a video game, it's a comic, it's a TV series, or it's a film, there's always new droids. And that is one of the funnest things to see in Star Wars, is the innovation that Lucasfilm is bringing to us in all different forms. And seeing characters like BD-1 that don't necessarily have voices, but show plenty of emotion. And then you have characters like L337, who has plenty of things to say and is for pro droids and stuff. So yeah, droids, cannot wait to see what they think, what they relate to in this story. The scope. So Star Wars, and I think that the scope of the sequel trilogy was not as great as the original trilogy, and definitely not as great as the prequels, because the prequels really gave us that entire imagining of what the galaxy is, where the Jedi are going, several planets. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is there's got to be several planets that are explored, maybe some planets we see later on in Star Wars, and maybe some brand new planets, as there's always going to be more planets to explore in Star Wars. Another huge thing relating to Star Wars is mythic. So Star Wars, when you look at it from the outside, can almost be like a new tale, like you would expect to see from the old Greek or the Roman times. There's so much mythology that spins out of Star Wars with the whole Force. And the way the Force is a kind of essence, a kind of feeling that people describe as it lives in all of us. You have the cosmic Force and you have the living Force. So that can be explored, again, much more in greater detail with the Jedi of this time that are going to think way differently than the Jedi during the prequel era. Space and lightsaber battles. Please give me all the space and lightsaber battles. The space battles and the lightsaber battles are what really brings me into Star Wars, and to see how lightsaber battles might be in this era is going to be very interesting, because we're already seeing a different design in the way the lightsabers look in this age versus than what we look at in original trilogy, right? So they're longer hilts, they're different colors. I'm sure the Jedi have different fighting styles. Let's see what the vehicles look like in space. And that's one of the most interesting things about this whole era of Star Wars, The High Republic, is we are going back so far. I mean, you look at the original trilogy vehicles and you compare them to the prequel trilogy. Like, look at the Naboo starfighters. All those ships look vastly different, and it was only a matter of like a 20-year span of time. I can't even comprehend what 200 years will make these vehicles and the environments themselves. Another thing on this list would be no single main character. So this is interesting. Again, I'm going to say this is interesting quite a bit throughout this because I'm just so excited for the High Republic, guys. But no single character. So what this is seeming like to me is a book slash comic version of the MCU for Star Wars. You know, Captain America, people love that character. People love Black Widow. People love Tony Stark. No one is necessarily the main character, and there are characters that float from piece of literature to whatever in this story. It's going to be fantastic to see this cool alien Jedi guy that I really attached to showing up in the comics that Kevin Scott is doing, and then showing up as well in Charles Soule's Light of the Jedi. I think that's going to be a huge kick for fans of this series to be able to really latch on to somebody and get excited when they're doing some crossover. And I think that's going to add to way more organic storytelling and definitely add up a lot more risk and a lot more attention for the fates of these characters that we're going to have no clue of what happens to them. I already did kind of go over the next point, the Force, with the terms of mythic. So again, I'm just super excited to see how the Force is going to factor into a story that's 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. Complicated monsters. Now, I don't think they mean monsters literally in the sense of, oh, these are non-sentient beings that are just existing on the world like a Rancor or an Alkali. But I think it could mean, like, from a villain perspective as well, different people just being so heinous and so evil that they can actually appear as despicable enough to make people really hate their guts. I mean, I'm looking at Game of Thrones as one of my favorite pieces of fiction. You look at a character like Joffrey Baratheon and Ramsay Bolton as some of the most hated characters I've hated in my life in the existence of fiction. Like, these characters I absolutely despise because of their actions and their dialogue, and everything else about them just made me want to hate them so much with every fiber of my being. So if they can bring that level of characters to this story, which I strongly think they have the possibility of doing, that is going to make things so darn intriguing. And we're going to move on to the final different section here called Star Wars Wishes. This is the stuff that is very, very cool. So the first one I listed was High Republic. So this was in talks for a long time. Remember, this is from one of the first talks I think they've ever had, the brainstorming sessions. The High Republic. Here we are, guys. We got that title. The High Republic, 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. We're seeing the Republic at its height, the Jedi Order at its height. What are they doing? How are they reacting? It's going to be very, very unique, very different than what we've seen before. Next up, we have Relic Hunters. So instantly I'm thinking of the Star Wars Resistance Season 2 episode. I think it had the same title. This one character is almost like an Indiana Jones going around trying to get different artifacts. And I'll also factor into, if you guys are comic readers, you know of the character called Dr. Aphra, introduced in Darth Vader issue number 3 from 2015, and she's gone on to span her own series and is about to launch her own new series again for the second time. She is basically a Indiana Jones of the Star Wars universe, going all over, finding different artifacts. I think that could work out very well for this era, especially if there's so much land and planets that haven't been explored. Think of all the different environments. If you have a certain character that is almost like a Dr. Aphra, that'd be pretty neat. And factoring in that is university. There is one aspect of the Star Wars novel that kind of explored an academy, and it's called Force Collector. It was one of the Rise of Skywalker books leading into the movie. And there was a short little sequence of kids going through their everyday. You know, we see everything in strife. Everybody in Star Wars is always running for their life. But what does it feel like when characters settle down into their own routine, not feeling their life is at risk? How does it go for them to get educated? What are they teaching these kids? How are they learning? What is the process like? I think that could be super intriguing as well. This next point is quite comical, but I would be all for it, and that is dinosaurs with an explanation point. Dinosaurs are a reason why my username as Star Raptor exists. I have a fascination with with velociraptors, and that is why I made my name the name it is. So yeah, it seems like it's a no-brainer. I mean, we're looking at lots of things like dewbacks are pretty much dinosaurs, and you also have the basilisk. I think that's what it's called, or the Varactyl. The Varactyl is basically a dinosaur as well. So yeah, bring on more dinosaurs. The next point we already went over, and that is representation slash diversity in Star Wars. So yeah, give us more of that. Give us more species, more genders, all that good stuff. It's just going to flesh out the universe even more. Also, we're looking at Arthurian legends. So, a big innovation and emphasis on this era of storytelling is to look at the Jedi Knights as not only like the Texas Rangers, but Knights of the Round Table. So, are we going to get these really awesome tales of like the unspeakable odds, the impossible odds of like 2 or 3 Jedi going to a planet and having to survive against this non-sentient monster creatures from all angles, and it's going to be this tale that is told to all the kids in the academy, in the universities, about how this guy stood up and he did all this action and he survived. Like, I can see them really building in lore to Star Wars like we haven't seen before. This next point also makes me excited for the Game of Thrones fan that I am, and that is for rival houses. Imagine if you have the House Stark and the House Lannister of the Star Wars universe, and we're seeing, this isn't necessarily a time of war, right? Because I think in Revenge of the Sith or whatever, one of the prequels, they mentioned that there hasn't been war for like a very long time, but there can be a sort of Cold War maybe that's brewing between different peoples of different houses in a sense, and that could be very interesting. This next point, I think it's going to factor in Sith Empire. I mean, you're talking about the Sith still being the rule of 2 at this point. It's not quite at that point where Darth Bane is still in his infancy, right? This is after that, so he has already instilled the rule of 2. That does not mean that there could be some remnants of the Sith Empire. I mean, look at the rise of Skywalker. There is the remnants of Palpatine, and he's got all his sycophants with him on Exegol. What makes them say that there couldn't be another Sith, like a Sith Empire of maybe not Force users, but there's a Sith Empire out there that's gaining power? And what's that to say that they didn't rise up at one point, and that could cause a whole big conflict in itself? But yeah, with the rule 2, I think there's going to be Sith agents. I think there's going to be, I hope that we have a book that is just all about whoever is the master and apprentice during this period. There could be a whole book about this Sith assassin going around killing people. Nobody knows who it is, but we know as the readers who it is because the story is about them. So it's not to say that the Sith can't exist. I think our main villains are still going to be the Nihil, but I think eventually, remember, we're only in phase 1 of the High Republic starting out in August. If this is a multi-year plan, I don't think there would be a world that exists where we don't have any kind of Sith during the High Republic at all. Factoring into this a little bit is Chaos Agents. So Chaos Agents kind of goes along with my speculation around the Sith Empire and having Sith agents around. Agents that are kind of sleeper cells that are going to be working for the Sith to kind of get reconnaissance on the general state of, the High Republic at this point in time. And the last point I want to talk about is Splinter group Force users. So what could this mean? I mean, we're looking at throughout the history of Star Wars as we know it right now, we have people that believe in the Force and they call the Force different things like the Ashla, and then you have the Bendu who is a Force user. You have Ahsoka Tano who is a Force user, doesn't call herself a Jedi. So there's plenty, and you have things like the people that are on the planet of Dathomir, right? Those Dathomirian witches, the Night Sisters. They are Force users in a way, but they're not exactly Jedi, right? They can kind of sense things and use magic, which is still an entity of the Force to a certain degree. So yeah, there you have it. There is a bunch of potential story elements, a bunch of potential themes for the High Republic. It gets me so excited just looking at all these ideas and just seeing, again, the scope, the way that these authors are thinking is the way that we should be seeing the stories for a long time. And the way to get excited about this is just to see every item on these lists, just being something that I'm very much looking forward to. What are you guys looking forward to? Let me know in the comment section and down below. For you guys that are new to the channel, welcome. I have plenty of other Star Wars videos that relate to the High Republic on the channel right now, so you can go ahead and check those out. And do make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and do hit that notification icon so you'll be notified when future videos go live. That is going to do it for me, Star Raptor. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also include 2 videos down below you guys should check out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me, and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at StarRaptor.